Doing an art project, and in the art project, I'm doing something that people really hate because I am whitebordering magic cards. And actually, right now, what I'm doing is kind of cool. I want to test the magic cards. So I'm doing a couple different things. I really like how the Zender cards come off. You can use a magic eraser, or you could technically use some acetone and a white cloth, or in this case, cotton balls and cotton pads that I'm using. These come off really easy. You can scrub, and I can try and show the border, but it's super, super clean how they come off. I'm interested in the retro and the old border foils, as well as just the old border cards, as well as some of the newer card stock. I'm going to try and test to see if this will come off cleanly, or if it takes a lot more effort. Because I did try and do a cookbook, and the cookbook I did that was whiteboarded took almost the entire eraser. Which is not bad, but these are about $3 for a pack of three. And by extension, I still have about a third of this eraser left, and I was able to do both of these. Now, this is probably kind of dead. I can hold it a little bit when you're scrubbing the edges and just go with a very rough scrub, trying to get that, but we'll see how it goes. But again, these Zendikars just come off so cleanly, and everyone in the Magic community seems to really hate these, but these are just gorgeous to me. I have an entire mismatched Asmarana Marticast Nakuldakar food fight deck, and so I've got 4 prints. I'll kind of show that later, but we'll see how this works. The main step, I like getting just a slab of cardboard, something that you can work with. I use just the very regular Scotch Blue Painter's Tape. It's about $7, but you get, I think it's like 100 meters, so it's really good. So we'll tape down some stuff and see how it goes. So we have these taped down, and the idea is to just take the eraser. Usually I try and take the top end, or like the vertical facing, and then scrub horizontally pretty roughly. Usually the way that I'll hold the eraser is going to be kind of like this at an angle, and then just applying, obviously I'm only using one hand, but pressing down on the cardboard pretty much at like a perpendicular angle. Now, one thing of note is that this eraser method can work with foils, but it's very unlikely that you want to do it with a foil. Unfortunately, what you'll see is just that you're warping the actual card. But on the flip side, if you use acetone, if you press too much, it'll cause foil tearing, and you can actually get to the blue print layer in the card, which is equally messy, and unfortunately can cause some really ugly cards. They come out looking really thinly, versus if you look in the back of this card, just from the scratching and some of the actual movement, it does have a little bit of whiting that you can see, and a little bit of marking, especially towards the edges here. But for the most part, it's clean, and it's definitely sleeve playable. The warping, if you get the cardstock too wet, will also start to have these water bubbles, or these bubbling on the cardstock. And unfortunately, what that means is that it can render it not playable in sleeves. So, whereas this came off after just a few wipes and a few pass-throughs, and then it took a little bit more to actually start cleaning. We'll sort of see how this comes off. I don't know if I can do this one-handed or not. More realistically, what I'll probably have to do is put the camera down, and we'll see how we can get. But, yeah, we're getting a little bit of tear away or come off. So let's just pause this for a minute and see what we can do. Okay, so we did a lot of wiping. It was about a minute and a half just to get this. Now, once this actually starts heating up, you'll start to feel like the friction causing some internal heating, or some external heating rather, on this. And you will see that this is whiting. This is a very good sign that it will still come off, and the pattern can certainly work. So you could definitely work this for the old border cards. But I will say it's about 3 times as much effort as doing like the Zendikar era printing. So whereas these cards are literally from 2020, some of these cards that are a little bit older, in this case, 6-7 years old, it feels like just because of the cardstock shifts and everything, while the quality may have improved in some aspects, this is actually better for this method, which is worse for the Magic community. So take that as you will. We're going to try doing this a little bit more, and then I'm going to switch over here and see how this comes off. Because again, I don't know, I haven't seen any specifics if the retro printings, or the retro frame printings rather, are any different than the 2021 cardstock that they're using for standard cardstock. I also just pulled up some stuff from a recent set from Double Masters. I'm going to see if possibly just within the last year or so, if maybe some of the supplemental sets had similar cardstock, which it does feel that way. It's a little bit glossier than old cards, where it's harder to come off, or if maybe it's a little bit easier. So we'll see if it's just by sort of the era for Magic, or maybe it's set by set. And if that's the case, we'll try and compile sets that are a little bit easier to start stripping and how it works. Worst case scenario, we could do the acetone method. I can kind of show that. The problem I will say is, like I said, you can work towards the blue layer of the card really easily. And I'm just dumping the eraser shreds here. I actually just have a trash can that I'm going to fold this mat over and just dump straight in. So not too much of an issue, but let's see what we get. So I'm testing this method, and I kind of gave it about the same amount of effort and the same amount of time, about a minute or so, and you can see that there is just this little bit of white that's slowly tearing up. So it is showing that I could strip this card this way if I wanted, but again, it's about 3 or 4 times as much effort as these Zendikar full arts are. Now, is that bad? No, I would really like to have white border on Holy Heats. I think that would be really cool for me and to make everyone hate me more than I already do have them hate me. But yeah, we'll give this a go, and then worst comes to worst, because this is a common. Granted, some commons and uncommons right now can, be $5 or $6. You may not want to do the method. We could certainly try with acetone. With this, you just got to be really, really careful, and you probably want to do about 2 or 3 cotton pads to actually get to the point where it'll work out. So let's see what we can do. So we can move to the acetone method. One thing I do want to show very quickly is some of the paint peels. Now, using one hand, it's not as easy, but what you'll see is you want to kind of lift your fingers at about a 45-degree angle, because what you can actually do is start to tear the layers between the two cards, or between the 2 points, between where you've taped it and where you put the actual card to the tape. So what you can do is just very lightly pull up. And what this will do is avoid pulling up or catching any of the paper or the inking from this unholy heat. Now again, you can see we did some effort here for this unholy heat. What we're going to do is try the acetone method, particularly for retro frames. I think that these are probably going to be a little bit easier, because if you see the difference in frame size, it's maybe only a millimeter or 2, but the amount of space that you have for black ink on the retro frames is a lot thicker than you do have on the new style of bordering. So what this actually allows us to do is give about a millimeter, not a millimeter, about half a millimeter space on this cardboard, and then it'll allow you a little bit more freedom so that you're not getting those weird spaces once it's white bordered, where there's just this little bit left of black, and it kind of blends it a little bit better. It's a little bit clumsy of a method, but it does allow for some freedom. We're just starting out this method, and I'm just starting this for fun, so while I do want it to look good, it doesn't need to be the most professional, ultra-grade quality. Painting, while similar, is going to be a completely different realm for this, so we'll see what we can do. This acetone bottle is really cool. It has a spray bottle that's a little bit different. I actually sprayed myself with it before, but what you do is you press down. I just got this at a Walgreens, so it is an official kind of licensed product of theirs. But one of the other things I've been doing is once you unscrew the cap here, you have just a standard nozzle device. What I like to sometimes do, because I like to control the amount of acetone that I'm putting on the card, is just dab it down on the cardstock. You'll see that you can kind of get a couple of drops. You really don't need a lot, but what you'll do is just create this, but of course along the border of the card. What this will do is allow you to control a little bit more how much you're actually putting on. And really, all you do at that point is you just start wiping. So I do this very gently. I try and start from the top, and you'll see that there is going to be a little bit of that kind of whitening start to show. Now, you might have to go harder and scrub. The problem I have with that method is that the tape itself will actually start to wear, and you'll see that the under part of this will start turning white, and it'll develop, and then what you'll actually have is a little bit of a wiggle room wherein you can get some acetone underneath on this part of the card and start to wear away this top part below the frame. So it can get messy, but we'll scrub this for about another minute and see how it turns. Again, you have to be very careful, which I probably will not show very well To avoid some of the watering or kind of that wetness, I recommend having a dry part of the cloth or having another cotton tab, and then every couple of go-throughs or wipes, actually drying it off. That way you're just preventing that a little bit as much as you can. So I stopped because unfortunately, the back of the card here now, you can feel it's completely stripped, and that's what I was fearing with it being glossy, is that while the acetone is going to take away the layers of this card, I stopped pretty much just halfway through. You could sort of see the thinness on the white ink. It's actually just tearing all the way down to that blue base level of the card, or that in-between stock between the layers. And really, the problem with that normally is not too big of an issue. You can use that to test the legitimacy of cards, and you can sort of see certain things, but it's just going to wear this down, and then basically what you're going to have is just this art in the text box surrounded by, like, 1.5 times the actual length of the card, in addition to any possible water bubbles or any kind of, like, wetness marks that you'll see. So unfortunately, I'm not worried about this because I have plenty of the retrofoil root wallas, but the acetone method doesn't really work. I would stray away from this. I do use the acetone, but really what I do is I use it for cleaning. So for example, if I have a little bit of blackness here, like you can see just this little bit of ink here, I can tape this down and then just very, very damp, at most, if not mostly dry acetone, and just touch and kind of do a very couple gentle rubs on the white bordering that I've already done with the eraser method. What that means is that if you want to stick to it with newer cards, you could certainly use the eraser method, and you could definitely get a good scrub to get that white border, and then just work it. Your hands will be super tired. I won't lie, it is an exhausting method, or you'll just get, like, cramps and whatnot. But you could do it. And then use acetone just as a cleaning method, and I think that's totally viable. I'm going to try out one more, just with the Theros Full Art. I don't think, because of the year of printing just between 2020 and 2021, there will be any difference. But I do want to test to see if possibly there's any distinction or if there's any differences in the cardstock, just to see if that's the variable, where it's by set or if it's more by era. One thing of note is I think that during War of the Spark is when they announced a change to cardstocks. I could be making that up, but we'll see. Just a moment. Yeah, it's just like I thought. Unfortunately, a minute or two of rubbing, and it's just there's very little whitening. So what that leads me to believe is just that with the new cardstock changes, really, if you want to whiteboarder stuff, you can either put in an ass load of effort, or you can use older cards. You know, older black borders from, like, the island I've got here. There's a couple examples of things, but we'll show you the side-by-side comparison. I'm just going to rub this for like a minute or two, let me tape it down, and I can kind of, hopefully I can show progress on camera, though one-handed, I will admit, is a bit, might be impossible. So we'll see. Can I do this one-handed? Here's the real question. We'll see. I might need to put this down to really start getting some progress, but hopefully I can get a little bit of noticeable whitening to kind of show the changes. But if not, you know, life happens. Let's give it just another 20, 30 seconds here just to see, or just to show. Oh yeah, look, we're already getting it pretty... I mean, again, that's just, you could see, that was maybe 15 seconds, and so if we do this for another minute or so, we can get this completely cleared. But again, finished product, just for comparison, literally just go side by side, be careful with your taping, and then disappoint your family in new and exciting ways. This has been a really long-winded video for something that I think literally only I like, but, you know, sometimes that's what life is. But if you've watched till the end, God, what are you doing with your life? But also thanks. Lick, caramel, and subscribe, or caramelize. Lick, caramelize, and subscription box? I think I'll go with that. Lick, caramelize, and subscription box. Or don't. I'm not going to control anyone's destiny.